for like product placement, occasionally there were brands that you could recognize in the show, even though most of it took place off world. What was that like? Tell me about that. Like what kind of, I'm trying to remember some of that. Yeah, like North Face was all the rave in the show later on. But not yet.
No, and at the beginning, and yet depending on what the company was, like I always tell the story, like I believe it was the Heather Ash episode, and the girl's writing on the wall she's gets a set of Crayola crayons.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So I had
learning
to go
curve
back
for Crayola.
I had to go back and forth with Crayola because Crayola doesn't want to be associated with anything that has guns, right? Oh. And so I had to go back and forth. And the other thing that the company was like, they didn't like the fact she was writing on the wall. They didn't want their products to be, whatever, just
wall art. Yeah, they didn't want kids to turn around and start doing that in households, probably.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was one I remember, and you get these requests. It's like, oh, in the next episode, Rick wants to read Mad Magazine. Yeah. Did you hear about that one?
No.
So Mad Magazine's like, nope. And it's hard for me because I have to go back to the producers and say, like, not interested, right? Yeah. They don't want. So Michael Greenberg's like, are you kidding? Because I guess there was some history with RDA and the show of Mad Magazine. So he picked up the phone and then we got Mad Magazine.
I'm trying to remember Mad Magazine in the Stargate episode. I remember him reading a tabloid in the Martin Lloyd episode, Point of No Return, which says headless alien found in topless bar.
Maybe we didn't know.
It was like an Inquirer tabloid, but I don't remember Mad Magazine. I could be wrong.
Who knows? Yeah. I mean, maybe I don't know.
That's wild. I remember him playing a Game Boy once for the Ergo episode. Is like something like a Game Boy? Would you have to clear, or is it because it's just a physical copy?
I don't remember clearing the Game Boy for that episode. And again, like the art department, they could fudge everything.
Yeah, that's true.
If you didn't get clearance, most companies were pretty good with it.
Yeah.
Remember, one of the hardest things I had to get clear was the dictionary. I swear to God.
Like Merriam-Webster?
Yeah, it was like Daniel wanted to, like, in his office, be looking at something in the dictionary. And I go to, I was going through all the different, like, Random House, Merriam-Webster, like all the biggies, Oxford. And they were just all such snobs. Like, oh, that's going to cost you. Or no, we don't. It was the weirdest thing because it's a dictionary.
Some people are just particular about their ad placement because I guess they look at it as kind of free advertising, so they're going to be really selective about it.
But at that point, like, I think it was like I sort of wrote it off to be like publishing, being like, we don't need our product. People are going to buy the dictionary. We don't need any other, free advertising.
And it's not one of those things where you go out and say, you know what, I really need to get a dictionary today. Yeah, I need to know those adverbs.
Not anymore, but at that
point. Right. Never once in my life have I been like, I need to know the synonym for bands. BANNS.
I'm the opposite. I had like, I had thesauruses and synonym finders.
That's so funny. What about the Air Force? Was there communication with the Air Force for various things?
Lots of communications with the Air Force. I'd have to send them the scripts.
That's right.
So John Tonioli, and Tom Gianazzo, who I think worked at the Pentagon. So they would give notes. They also gave notes on like things like costumes, like that. Person wouldn't have those epaulets, or you'd have to, stuff like that. I found that a really interesting part of the whole show because growing up in Canada, I was thinking about this. I was like, I don't know if I knew one person that went into the military my entire life.
Wow.
And then suddenly it's very different here. Yeah. And suddenly we're having planes in the show and, the general of the Air Force. I thought about this the other day, and I'll tell you why. When they came up, General Ryan.
Yeah.
And Orion and his wife came up.
His wife came too.
Yeah, his wife came too. I have a nice picture. I'll have to find it.
Oh, yes, please.
I'll go to the archives and find some photos for you.
Please.
But, yeah, so they came up, but before they came up, they swept the studio, the Bridge Studios, like inside and out. I was thinking, not to diverge.
You're talking security. We're not talking brooms.
Security. We're talking security. Their security came up like 3 days before.
Yeah.
And swept our whole buildings and the other buildings on the lot. I'm thinking, so I felt like, I've been, had some exposure to the Secret Service or whatever they were.
Right, exactly. The chief of staff is coming through. That had to have been a big deal. I remember the photo of the general with RDA, and that was just that's quite the nod for the show. And in that same episode, which is I believe it's Prodigy, is when we get a look at the inside of the Air Force Academy. Not necessarily the real Air Force Academy, but they simulate it. And so that was a big deal. The Air Force has said, at one point it was their biggest recruitment for their whole thing that Stargate was.
They would come to the conventions.
Wow.
Those set up a booth at the conventions in Canada.
For GateCon? Really? I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, I remember at least 1 or 2 of the conventions going out in Richmond. And they set up and we were like, that's so bizarre. But then, people come from all over the world. So.
Well, they have questions, they have questions about how the organization integrated with the show. That's really, it's not common. It's not commonly done. So how exciting.
But those guys have the best job. They were like the entertainment liaison officers for the American Air Force and the Pentagon. Wow. So they got to, John Tolioli and Tom Gianozzo, they got to go to different sets. And they took Brad. He got to go on a fighter jet.
Yep.
The American Air Force, they tell you that's right. The American Air Force with all these huge movie moguls, he got sent down there and they did a whole...
Yeah, Brad would have been in his element for sure. Yeah.
It was... They did G's and...
in the air.
Around and all that stuff.
Wow. So...
other stuff... Yeah, there was just so much... A lot of administrative stuff with the Writers Guild of Canada. So once your outline would get approved, we had to sort of follow the collective agreement of the Writers Guild and the Directors Guild and all, the various unions. So your script, your pitch would go to outline. We had to let the Writers Guild know. Then then it would go to a writer's draft or a first draft. We had to let the Writers Guild know. So every draft, and then we had to let the Writers Guild because that would affect credits.
Right. So they're just keeping track of everything as you move forward.
Yes.
They're not waiting for the final script to be done and then to have that information. That's interesting.
No, you need to tell them at each step of the process, because you might get it night, for Brad, there would be episodes where outline by or story by.
Yeah.
And then they've been cut off because they couldn't write an outline or they didn't like the outline. And they're like, okay, we're going to take this over.
Yeah.
And
so they want to have the trail.
Yeah, it's basically a paper trail. And I dealt with the lawyers a lot as far as things like E&O insurance. So they would do a review. They would get the clearance report. So every episode had to go through a clearance company. We used Act 1 script clearance.
Is that for names and for legal things?
So say we want to do an episode and there's a David Reed and but he goes around and he wipes out a whole planet. Now they'll come back and say, well, there is one David Reed in wherever supposedly. I mean, if it was off world, that was fine, but it could be wherever it was, be like, we suggest, your name would be fine actually, because it's a fairly common name, but sometimes these guys would want to name a character after somebody they knew, and then they come back, there's one real living person with that exact same name living in, this area, and the lawyers would say, no, you change the name. And then depending on, the writers would be like, no, that was my buddy from high school. We're going to.
Oh, okay. Just to keep things clear in the event of a possible lawsuit?
Sorry, I'm very ADD. I don't know.
No, you're okay. No, you're okay. You should see me after some caffeine. This is to avoid legal issues like lawsuits and things like that, for someone to come after you and say, hey, you've defamed me.
Yes.
Okay,
So
wow.
in order to get what's called errors and omissions insurance,
okay,
you have to have a lawyer sign off on it.
I see.
So we had our entertainment lawyers, and then, that would then go down to MGM, to their legal department. And, it's a trail, the chain of documents, things like that. But, so they could say, well, this whole show is insured except this name. So like this person could come after you, like she'd say, I'm signing off on this except for this.
Oh, so they can literally put, except for this issue, this is clear. Wow.
Yeah. But they didn't usually do that. It was pretty, yeah.
I know a number of cases there were writers who, put a certain name in there. I didn't realize that they would be like, okay, well, we have everything good except for this. Well, this person that you're flagging is my friend.
Right.
Interesting.
So then they'd be like, forget it, keep it in.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks for watching this clip from Dial the Gate. You can find the full live stream shows on our YouTube channel or visit dialthegate.com for the complete schedule. See you on the other side.